Hello, my name is Ben,
And I'm Techtic.
and we are the hosts of the Too Vague podcast this week, where our word is a very Halloweeny. It's a Halloween themed word, not a Halloweeny. Horror.
Ooh.
Ooh. How do you say horror?
Horror?
Okay. I don't know if there's a way that it's different. It's
Horror?
yeah, horror. It's like did you watch the what was it? 30 Rock.
I did not.
Okay, like the rural juror? No. So you're not going to get any of this, so we'll just skip it. So before we get into horror, we have a question from our folks in the audience in a segment we call questions from my aunt. You know what? It's getting to be a point where I think people are annoyed with us. So we'll just I won't do the introduction. I'll just say it's a question my aunt has about the show, and then just be done with it, right?
No, I like questions from my aunt.
Oh, okay. All right, that's good. So we'll keep it. We'll keep it then.
You should do an audio track introing it, though.
Oh, okay. Since now I've got the ability to have someone else come in, I mean, I could give her a call and just have her ask the question. So that would be fun. But anyway, she has a question. Her question from our episode 15. We were talking about how open world games have more substance than first-person shooters. Her question is, what is an open world game and what is a first-person shooter? So I can take the first-person shooter. That's the perspective. So in a first-person shooter, it's a game where you run around with guns and shoot people. Generally, you can see your hand and see the gun. FPS is just first-person shooter, meaning first-person perspective and a shooter. So, Techtic, do you want to take the open world game?
Well, first thing I want to say is a first-person shooter can be an open world game, but not all open world games can be first-person shooters. It's one of those square rectangle paradigms. Now, as far as what an open world is, for me, an open world game is a game that I will never finish and will just become enamored with side quest. And so the possibilities are endless. You can travel basically anywhere and do whatever you want. If you don't want to touch the story with a 10-foot pole, you could not do that. You could just go off and do all the side quests and just have fun with the game.
Yeah.
That is what I define an open world game as.
So is that a game descriptor that do you prefer that in a game? Do you like an open world or do you prefer something that's more linear, or is it a little bit of both for you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say that it depends on my mood.
Okay.
There are some days where I'm into a Skyrim-y type game. There are other days where I just want to quick get in, get through the story, get out, and call it a day.
Yeah.
For example, Watch Dogs, I wanted nothing to do with the open worldness of it. I just focused on the main plot line and finished it up.
That was the one where you could have an army of grandmas, right? Or something like that.
It was.
Did you do the army of grandmas?
I just stuck with the one guy that I thought was cool and didn't really leverage anyone else on my team.
Okay.
I was kind of boring, if I'm being honest.
The game in general, or
the way in which I developed my team, I didn't put any effort into
okay.
that.
That was one of those games that I was kind of on the fence about trying, but in general, I am not a fan of too much of an open world unless it has a distinct storyline. I think one of the things that Skyrim had, it did have an open world, but the main storyline felt like it transcended. It was a good fun storyline. So if I was in the mood to just wander, I could do that and stumble upon some side quests that get me some good loot or whatever accidentally. And it was kind of cool, or just hidden sort of quests. But I think that game hit the balance pretty well. Also, something like Fallout did a pretty good job of that too. But generally, unless it has a good story, I just, I'm a fan of weird storylines in general. And the open worldness kind of gets in my way sometimes. So
I get lost in the open world and never finish those games. Both games that you just mentioned, I got lost in, and usually due to my lack of saving, various save points. You know, when you can have multiple saves instead of just overwrite,
Oh, yeah.
overwrite. I end up basically trapped in a place that's much higher level that I can't get out of without severely losing progress.
Right.
I've done that on both. In Fallout, I'm trapped in the radioactive wasteland and cannot get out.
Mm-hmm.
And in Skyrim, I'm trapped in the wizard college because I went to the strongest, biggest guy and punched him in the face deep in the college. So every time I spawn, I die and then respawn and then die, and it's horrible.
Yeah. I think those particular things are also you're at the mercy of how well they tested them. You know what I mean? Like the spawn points and things. And it's something like Skyrim that's so vast is probably really difficult to play test appropriately or QA test appropriately. So
well, when you punch the head honcho in the wizard college, all of the other wizards come at you in the whole building. So it doesn't matter where your point was, there's always going to be someone who's stronger than you.
Right.
Taking you down.
Did you do that on purpose? Did you just want to see what happened?
Yeah, kinda. And now I know. I'm reckless when it comes to these games. I'm absolutely reckless. And then as far as Fallout goes, I didn't have my suit to protect me from radioactive rays, and I just sprinted deep into that zone because I just wanted to get there and see if I can get there. I got there and then die.
Right.
I'm an idiot when it comes.
So that's why you stick to no open worlds, because you're just too
reckless. I get too impatient and want to get to the next point without doing the effort of getting to the next point.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's the answer to the question. So let's talk about the word horror, just in time for Halloween. Also, Nora's birthday, Halloween.
Happy birthday, Norah.
Yeah, happy birthday, Norah. Buy yourself a PlayStation 4. Or, well, a 5. If you buy a PlayStation 5...
Get 2.
Yeah, buy a PlayStation 4 and a PlayStation 5. Give me the PlayStation 5, and I'll watch it for you while you're, getting used to playing games on a PlayStation 4.
It's kind of you.
She really wants to play. She really wants to kill people with a banana.
I mean, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Yes, that's correct. So, the word horror. What is your first thought when I say the word horror?
What mainly comes to mind is a specific set of horror films.
Okay.
That got their debut on YouTube.
Oh.
So, typically when I think of movies, right, the scariest movie I've ever seen was Pet Sematary.
Okay.
But I don't really have fear of anyone's pet that was buried in the ground coming at me.
Okay.
Or anyone's kid for that matter.
Right.
That's not a real thing. However, I do have two very large fears that sort of spook me when, like, if the dog has to go out late at night, say 2 a.m. or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's two things that I'm actively like looking out for because I am constantly scared of them. Number one, and feel free to laugh at me, Aliens.
Okay.
The movie, The Interactions of the Fourth Kind, or whatever it was.
Oh, you're talking
came out
Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
That came out. It came out around 10 years ago, something like that.
Oh, okay.
And it was sort of a paranormal activity camera shooting style.
Okay.
And it just chilled me to the bone. But that is not the scariest thing that freaks me out when I am outside at night. Because, I've seen a UFO in the sky, and it did a weird checker mark thing, and like I was with my dad, and he saw it too. So it's not like I was just my eyes playing tricks on me.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I definitely believe that there's something out there, but I always feel like either A, I'd see it coming and I'd be screwed, so there's nothing I could do about it, or B, it's statistically unlikely because vast universe and what have you. The other one, and this is the bigger one, that's why I'm saving it for second, is have you ever heard of Slenderman? This is the YouTube series. I'm
yes. Yes, I have heard of Slenderman.
He's so slender, and everything outside, be it a tree, a light post, whatever, resembles that jerk. And it just makes walking late at night horrifying. And there's your word, horror.
Horrifying. Are you afraid that that person actually exists? Is that your fear? Because horror and fear are kind of go hand in hand, right?
So Slenderman's based on sort of child abductions, right?
Right.
And it's really based on the premise of beings lurking in the shadows to abduct you.
Right.
That's very much a reasonable fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's not this larger than life figure,
Mm-hmm.
but people watching you at night up to no good.
Right.
It kind of resonates with you in a realistic way.
Okay. And when you go out with the dog, does the dog make you feel more comfortable, or are you, are you also freaked out for the dog?
So if they're coming at me, I'm throwing my body on the line to protect my dog, first and foremost. I am a dog parent, number one.
Gotcha.
And whatever I have to do, be it a person or a monster from another dimension, whatever, I will try to fight this thing. But like I said, based on the YouTube series, that thing, there's no stopping you. You black out, and next thing you know, you're woken up in weird places doing weird things.
Right. Interesting.
So if you don't know what Slenderman is, guys, it is horrific. The team on YouTube did a fantastic job considering their low budget, recording it and keeping you on suspense, and it's creepy.
But was there also a movie called Slenderman?
There might have been, but I was already kind of freaked out by the YouTube series.
Okay.
And so there was no way that I was gonna continue to stoke the fire.
Okay. Do you remember when that series came out?
I started watching it my senior year of high school.
Okay.
That was 11 years ago.
Okay. So sometime in 2008 or around there,
Maybe
or 2009.
12 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were there really good special effects? Was it special effects heavy, or was it more horrific because it felt realistic?
It was all just costume and camera tricks.
Oh, okay.
There wasn't a lot of special effects to be had.
So it was practical.
The grainy footage, quick darting back and forth. Another comparison would be, gosh, what was that movie that came out?
Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch Project. It was shot similar to that. And those kind of movies, because they give you this, standard horror films that have a steady camera, and you're just kind of watching these other people get, chopped up. At the end of the day, it's recorded like a movie. But all of these films where it's shaky camera and things like that, they make you feel like it's real footage. And that screws with me, man. That just absolutely gets to me.
And it doesn't matter where you see it, if you see it like in a theater or you see it. The YouTube series, not talking about that, but the Blair Witch Project also freaked you out?
It doesn't matter. I mean, like I said, the YouTube series was on my laptop sitting on my dorm room bed.
Right.
There was no scene that was really set to try to immerse you.
Right.
And it just gets to me. Like it's basically the equivalent of a friend saying, "Hey man, look at this footage I just captured. You're not going to believe it." And then you get goosebumps.
It's not something that's crippling, right? It's just something that you get that feeling and then you just move on. Or are you?
Well, no, yeah, it's not crippling, but I feel whenever I'm out there, I feel like I'm being watched. And the interesting point of that is both of those fears emanated from the same style of recording.
Right.
And yet, Paranormal Activity, which is Ghost, does not freak me out. Which is interesting, because the reason why is it's not a tangible figure, right? It's just,
right.
The wind knocks something. So it's not centered around, and maybe I'm learning something about myself. Maybe it's not aliens, or it's not Slender Man. Maybe it's the common thread there is abduction, right?
Right.
Yeah, maybe I have
being
a fear
taken
of being
away.
abducted.
Yeah.
Which there's definitely some childhood stories to be had there.
Right, probably. The human brain is really interesting, the way that it can kind of twist things or make you feel certain things based on past experiences. And it's not always obvious, right? It's not always there's not always a one-to-one sort of connection between those two things. The first thing that I think of is, are you familiar with Fangoria magazine?
I am not.
Okay. It was a magazine that was big in the early 80s, but it was basically a magazine from the people who made Starlog, which was basically a Star Trek centric magazine. And we're talking paper magazines. Starlog was started in 1976. And originally this Fangoria magazine was called Fantastica, which was basically going to be a fantasy centric version of the Starlog, which was just sci-fi. But they found that people don't want to talk about fantasy or don't want to read about fantasy. So it was a failure. And then it was changed to just focusing on mostly horror movies. So that's where it got changed to Fangoria. And it was, as of issue 7, and this is kind of gonna basically tell you what time period it is. Issue 7 featured Jack Nicholson from the movie Shining on the front cover of it.
Classic.
Yeah, very classic. With that, it switched to just horror movies. And so all of these, when slasher pictures became big back in the early 80s, that's when it was really started to, like teen males, were really into like the horror and things like that. So the slasher movies, it would go behind the scenes and talk to horror directors and also show you things about how the special effects were done, because they were all done practically. So that's what I think of. I remember one article in particular, and for some reason, all the quote unquote cool kids, the weird cool kids who would go outside and smoke behind the building or whatever, were really into heavy metal and Fangoria magazine. I remember seeing one where the focus was on American Werewolf in London. Did you ever see that movie? It's pretty old. It's like 80s, but
I have not. I'm sorry.
no need to apologize. There's a scene in there where he gets transformed into a werewolf that was done all practically. It's like these days you see a CGI version of that where a transformation would occur. But this was all done in a very interesting, unique way. And I remember reading the article about how they had to do the makeup and position, the actor. And it was, for some reason, that how the sausage is made on those movies really intrigued me.
I've said sort of a similar thing with respect to all 80s horror films. They didn't have the CGI, so they had to use makeup and make things really look twisted and demented. That's why, in my opinion, Pet Sematary is the all-time scariest movie that I've ever seen and probably will ever see in my life, simply because the way they did that movie and the makeup on a lot of different scenes were just meant to just deeply disturb you.
Right.
Whereas now I think they kind of take a cheat, they just do the cheap jump scares, which fine, that's scary, but it's just, it doesn't leave you with chills and make you just feel uncomfortable. And I think that's the key into a horrific movie is the sense of just feeling sick and uncomfortable.
Exactly. And I think you covered my next question, which is going to be, what is your favorite horror film? Would you say that Slenderman is your favorite horror film, or is that just something that impacted you and made you, scared of going out at night?
So Slenderman is what I think of when I think horror.
Okay.
My favorite horror film, like I said, because of the disturbing nature of it and the fact that they hit what I define as a horror film nail on the head, was Pet Sematary.
Pet Sematary, yeah. And you're talking the original one that came out in the 80s?
Yes. Nerdbomber and I have watched that, and we've had to just pause and just stop for a second. Like, that's how like it resonates with its audience.
That's really interesting. I think that's what makes a successful horror movie, right? Is one that resonates with the audience. When people think of horror movies, they think of slasher pictures and things like that. Is that incorrect? Or is that something that's painted by the fact that I grew up in the 80s? And so whenever I think of a horror movie, it's like Nightmare on Elm Street, it's like Halloween, or...
Yeah, but those don't scare me.
Right.
They're just kind of hilarious, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Right.
You know, there's the trope that let's run up the stairs instead of going to a car. Let's
Right.
let's lock ourselves in a closet. And
Right.
it's
All
just-
these kids doing dumb things, right?
It doesn't make sense in those movies, and it makes them not horror films. They become comedies.
So blood or guts or anything disgusting doesn't have anything to do with it for you.
No. Again, going back to my prime example of Pet Sematary, the worst, most horrific scene is right around, like before the kid even becomes this evil thing. There's this scene where it like flashes to the sister of the wife,
Uh-huh.
who is like disabled and like twisted up,
Okay.
and it's like flashing and zooming in on her, and it's that scene that there's no chopping of limbs, no guts, no blood, no nothing.
Right.
And it's just deeply disturbing.
Interesting. When I think of something that's horrific, I don't think of blood and guts, and I'm glad that I'm not alone in that. I think when you have a realism that, like you mentioned earlier, that this thing could happen. This movie that I'm going to mention, it did have one kind of supernatural, silly thing at the end that kind of like snapped you back into reality. But up until the very end of the movie, it was all very plausible. I'm sure you've heard of Wes Craven.
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Wes Craven is a renowned horror director who, in the 80s, his main thing was gets associated with Nightmare on Elm Street.
I've seen all the Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay. And that doesn't do anything for you either. You're not freaked out by it.
I mean, Freddy Krueger is just kind of a weirdo.
Yeah. And he's kind of funny too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he's cracking sarcastic jokes. He's
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I watched one of those a couple times because it was like I was a young perverted kid, and I think there was like a boob scene in there. Being honest,
Okay.
logged some hours there. That's for sure.
Right. It's why is the film at this certain point of the film all worn? It's like it gets all weird. Wes Craven was basically the force behind the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I remember a lot of kids in high school were like, "Oh, they're really creepy," and it's like, "Don't fall asleep," and all this stuff, and having nightmares and things like that.
I have really low blood pressure, so as soon as I sit down, I'm sleeping, even if I'm watching Nightmare on Elm Street. So
Okay.
I guess I had to come to terms with it pretty quick.
Gotcha. So you're like, it says don't fall, and then you're asleep already, and you didn't hear the warning.
Exactly.
The horror movie, and this is something, like I said, Wes Craven was the director, but it's the movie Serpent and the Rainbow. Have you ever seen The Serpent and the Rainbow?
I should just put a Nope track out there.
So, yeah, I probably should just stop asking questions and go right into the, instead of saying, have you seen Serpent and the Rainbow? It was a film back in 1988. Budget of $7 million, made $19.6 million at the box office. But it was a movie about voodoo and zombies, but it was done in a really interesting way. So it's based off a real life event where this person named let's see, Clairvius Narcisse, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but he in Haiti died in 1962 and then returned to his village in 1980, saying that he was conscious as he was dying, but just paralyzed. So, and during his death and while he was buried, and later someone came along and removed him from the grave and forced him to work at a sugar plantation for those 18 years he was missing. And people who talked to him confirmed, he had details of the children, of, being in the village with family and things like that no one else would necessarily have, right? And they found, the substance that was in the coffin that was made. It's some sort of datura species of flowers that basically cause hallucinations, and it's a poison, but it's known to cause hallucinations. So Clarvius, would you name your kid Clarvius?
No, I would never do that.
We're adding more on the nope track. So Clarvius comes back and they exhume the casket. There's no one in there, and they find this substance that could paralyze someone. So it's basically based on that, but in the movie, Bill Pullman is an anthropologist who's hired by a pharmaceutical company to investigate the drug that these Haitian voodoo priests use to create the zombies, basically the people that they bring back to life, so they can make some sort of super anesthetic. And it was one of those things, like I said, it was pretty realistic as far as, like the whole, it wasn't bloody. The things that were horrific in the movie, you didn't see on screen. It was left up to the mind to envision what happened.
Was it the premise of being buried alive?
Yeah, that was the thing too, right? These are all things that it's not about the blood and guts and the actual, stuff that a lot of people think of when they think of horror. It's about, well, what would happen if, and you leave it up to the mind. And that is what makes a really successful horror movie, I think. It's not just, killing or whatever. It's the psychological state that it puts you in, and how you wonder how you would respond. And there's sort of a believability about it. If you're into voodoo or just want to see a cool movie, I would highly suggest you see Serpent and the Rainbow. So, did you nope out of that?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to watch that for other reasons.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask why, or?
Because I had a nightmare about being buried alive recently, and I don't want to.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a thing too, right? That's, like these fears being closed off. And yeah, originally the full cut was 3 hours long of this movie, but fortunately for everyone who watched it, it was cut down to 98 minutes. Do you have a viewpoint on long movies?
As long as I got snacks, I'm having a good time.
Okay, so
honestly.
It doesn't matter the length. So anything.
So when we watch movies, we have our big snacks and our little snacks. Is
Okay.
What we do. We start off with, your mustard and your mini hot dogs or your pizza bagel bites. Those are the big snacks, the high caloric value snacks.
Okay.
And then once those are finished, there's a large bowl of popcorn to go into to get you to the rest of the duration. And then the drink of choice is, those large drink lemonade cups that they sell like at all these different events and things like that. Maybe not lemonade; they're like Gatorade cups or like big gulp cups.
Yeah. Okay.
Big ones. Those are the drinks we have set. So, yes, we're buckled in, ready to go.
So that's
So as far as duration, as long as I got my snacks and my drinks,
you're good.
I'm on it. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's horror. That's how else do you get through the Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah, I start to get antsy, and that's my reason why I just don't. I 3 hours for a movie. I mean, I've made now in today's day and age, it's a lot easier to get through 3 hour movies because I can put it down, right? I can come to a point and then, but back going to the theater, I had a very strict no 3 hour movie rule because if it takes that long, I just get antsy.
Fair enough.
So I want to talk about another movie that you've never seen at some point, but I'm going to ask you a question first. Is there a particular scene in a movie, not necessarily a horror movie, that when you think of that movie, or I mean, the scene itself is a horrific sort of scene, as far as it evokes this, sort of sense of fear or horror.
I mean, I've already alluded to exactly which scene.
Yeah.
Right. It's the one in Pet Sematary with the sister.
Right. But that's a traditional horror movie, right? That's not necessarily just a scene in general. I mean, I'll accept that as your answer. If you can't think of a non-horror movie.
I don't know of a non-horror movie that invokes fear.
Okay.
I guess, do you have an example?
Well, I have an example of, I mean, it's an adventure movie that was made in 1985. Young Sherlock Holmes. Have you ever seen that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me happy. So do you remember the part with the stained glass window when these people were hallucinating and they had these hallucinations, and there was the stained glass window that jumped out and came alive and chased him into basically his death. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
That freaked you out?
No, it didn't freak me out. I just thought it was a cool scene. That kind of gives you this sense that hallucinations, right? I mean, hallucinations can be anything. It's whatever the imagination can create. So it can be anything from something goofy, like what happened to Watson with the little cakes and things tying him down, to something like a stained glass window coming alive and threatening to attack you. I think that is it. Yeah, the scene itself may be laughable, but think about how the human brain can create things that are even more horrific than that, and hallucinations or otherwise.
I mean, that's sort of why Slenderman can be terrifying, right? That's based on the fact of you see all these tall, shadowy figures when you're out at night, and it's trees, it's telephone poles, it's nothing threatening at all.
Right.
But the mind kind of goes to a place of this we're being watched.
Right.
We better protect ourselves.
Right.
Which always makes me wonder, as far as an evolutionary stance, why does the brain do it, and why does it look for humanoid things that are watching it, and why does that make them uneasy? It creeps me out.
Yeah. I think you stumbled upon something that makes perfect sense, which is, as humans, if we were alone in an environment that was unfamiliar, I mean, being watched, we would want to have that feeling. You know what I mean? So we could act appropriately and be prepared, and the fear starts the endorphins going and starts to get you ready. But other than that, I mean, I don't know how useful that is. It seems like it's more of a you can drive yourself to panic. Any other closing thoughts on horror and horror movies before we hit our video games?
No, I think I've covered my main sect of horror films.
Okay. You said you have a fear of Alien, and I guess we would be remiss. I'm not going to use the the illegal. We would be remiss if. But anyway, the movie Alien. The movie Alien was something that seemed so horrific back then, but
not
now
scary.
Right. You think it's not scary.
Correct.
Okay. So the idea of something you swallow growing inside you and bursting out of your chest is not
Because
frightening.
that's not an alien. That's a monster just trying to feed.
Okay. But I'm talking about the movie Alien. That's part of the way that they breed, right?
No, yeah, I know.
Okay.
That it's sort of under the same classification of a zombie or a vampire, where they're just feeding and spreading, feeding and spreading, not really taking you, experimenting on you. They don't want to kill you,
Right.
but they want to keep you around and study you and
Right. And that's more horrific to you than
take me, kill me fast. I'm fine.
just don't study me and prod me, and
Yeah.
definitely don't do the anal probes.
And then if they just release me, then I'm stuck in this state of telling people what I experienced, and everyone just thinks I'm crazy. No one believes me. I lose all my friends. My life spirals out of control. And then where am I?
Wow.
I've thought about this.
I can tell, Techtic, you've definitely thought about this. So anything like that is just, it's more laughable to you. So anything like Alien or whatever in the horror genre.
Alien is just a jump film. It's the same kind of
Yeah.
way in which they're trying to scare you, because it's not something. I mean, in what world is there going to be this alien species where I'm on a spacecraft in outer space trying to fight them off?
Right.
I guess civilian space travel is becoming a thing now, so maybe soon.
So maybe soon. It's kind of interesting what people are afraid of. My father had a fear of spiders. And I mean, it seemed to me to be irrational, because he would freak out whenever he saw a spider, and he was this big man who could definitely step on a spider. But something about being horrified, there's a component to it that to me, it's an irrational fear. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's rational to the person, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
and so I don't think there's some kind of traumatic experience or something that resonated with them in their life, in which that their body tells them, stay away from that.
Right.
It's no good. You have
Yeah.
no business being near that. I think any fear can be really prescribed as rational, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'm not afraid of spiders. I like I said, I'm afraid of being abducted and buried alive.
Right.
Those are two very real things that can happen, but that was after me kind of rooting down into the films in which I found horrifying. It wasn't an instant thought / realization of
Right.
what I am afraid of.
Right. Right.
So to my point is, with enough digging, I think anything can be rationalized.
Okay. Sci-fi and horror. Why do you think those things, do you think those things are classified together?
No, you can have a sci-fi film that's not horror and a horror film that's not sci-fi.
Right.
They just tend to blend well when you have big scary monsters.
Right. Which brings us into the Dead Space trilogy. What do you think about that series of games in general?
So you're going to probably freak out. I have not yet played Dead Space.
Oh, okay. So
I've evaluated making the weapons from Dead Space with, Arduino and Raspberry Pi, because I find the light up aesthetic behind them very satisfying. But I have not. Generally, in this household, we steer away from horror video games.
okay.
Minus one that I bought for Nerd Bomber for a birthday, which I ended up having to play for her because she was too scared.
Wasn't Dead by Daylight, was it?
The Evil Within.
Was that something that you weren't scared of because of your specific...
I found that game incredibly challenging, and it made my palms sweaty because you had to be hyper aware.
Okay.
And it was a lot of jump scares, but after I put it down, I did not lose sleep or anything like that.
Right. Right.
Partly because I was sitting. See, I brought back the joke.
It's a callback. It's a callback. So with something like that game, is it the jump scares? What is it to you? Jump scares aren't necessarily horrific, right? They can show you some sort of piece of something that may be horrific, or a vision, or a decapitated head, or whatever. But jump scares by themselves are just devices used to heighten the suspense, right?
I think it's used to heighten the suspense, and they're trying to make you scared by having these ghoulish figures, but I don't know, just the fact that it's a video game and the graphics
Right.
aren't still quite there yet.
Right.
It doesn't stick with me. The main reason I'm not huge into horror video games is not because it's scary, but rather because there's a lot of just being hyper aware and having good reaction times.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a sweaty person.
Okay.
I just and that kind of, being on your toes all the time gets me sweatier.
Right.
And then I have to change shirts mid play, and it's this whole thing.
Towel off. You gotta go outside, get the garden hose going.
You think I'm joking?
No.
It is
I'm
bad.
I have known people who have really, extreme sweating issues.
But it's only certain games, certain genres of games, and that's why, like I said, I have to have a spare shirt on the ready.
So what other genres?
Anything that's hyper intense, like Rocket League, for example.
Okay.
You're always aware. You're always tracking the ball. You're moving quick. You're reacting fast.
All right.
It's basically like playing sports.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah. So it's anything where you are hyper aware of your surroundings in the game.
Or super competitive. Like another one is Smash.
Okay.
So
you sweat at that too?
Yeah, we're getting to the point where we're realizing I have a real perspiration problem.
I'm not laughing at that.
I am. You're fine.
Okay, good. I don't want to offend. I've known some pretty sweaty people in my life. It sounds like you need to be here. That's what it sounds like. You need to be in Arizona if you can stand the heat. It sounds like you would be cool beyond belief because of evaporative cooling.
That's fair. Because you guys have the nice dry heat.
Yes, we do. Most of the time. We do have a monsoon season here that occurs usually around July and August. But that's the only time it gets, and occasionally during winter time. But yeah, in general, it's dry heat. The problem is that how high the temperature gets. That's usually the problem. So I think Bash is trying to tell me something. He knocked my glasses off the table. You haven't played Dead Space. So Dead Space must be the thing that Illegal 86 is all about, right? That's the one.
Yes.
Okay. Because it is a weird sort of story about aliens and this thing that is not understood and turns people into monsters and all sorts of things like that. I do remember some jump scares in that was kind of, the game did a good job of not relying entirely on jump scares and using them appropriately. Like anything in a game, I think if you use it every once in a while and don't overuse it, it could be an interesting device.
Yeah, you can really maximize its effect.
Exactly. I think that sometimes, though, people just want to, it's like, oh yeah, let's give them jump scares because that's what they want. So you can overuse that in video games or movies. You haven't played Dead by Daylight. I know that because you don't like horror things. But do you like survival games?
We play a good amount of zombie survival games. But again, that's more, I'd honestly compare that with Animal Crossing.
Okay, wait. Okay, this is going to require some explanation.
I'm just trying to build up my village, and then I got the Nook landlord bringing me down all the time. It's no different than zombie hordes.
Right. Oh, you're talking Tom Nook?
Yeah.
The slumlord?
Bastard.
Yeah. Does give you an interest-free loan, though. I mean,
yeah,
that doesn't happen very
often. A better
often.
example might be Ark, where you're just trying to build up a nice little area,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got stupid dinosaurs stomping around.
Stupid dinosaurs. Speaking of which, kind of like open world games, did you play Horizon Zero Dawn?
I did not.
Okay.
I meant to get to it, but Nerd Bomber was hoarding the console.
Gotcha. I'm guessing that she loved it.
Yeah, she swears it was the game of the year when she played it.
Yeah. I concur. Anytime that you've got you're shooting robotic dinosaurs with a bow and arrow, that's all you got to tell me. I've greenlit the project as soon as you tell me that. horror related to video games. So there's nothing that really is horrific to you.
The closest thing to I got to getting legitimately scared was in a VR experience,
Okay.
and I believe it was the Resident Evil,
Okay.
and it was like an abbreviated experience.
Okay. So was
So
like a demo?
yeah, but the raw immersion kind of made you feel like you were really up against the tides. And in that experience, I said, wow, they definitely hit the nail on the head on freaking me out.
Right.
But the second you take the headset off,
It's all gone.
it's all gone.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I've been asking a lot of people whether they think the next iteration, and I think you've talked about this on your program on the Online Warriors podcast. But do you think the next iteration of where video games are going is going to be strictly VR? Is that
No.
the path? Okay. You don't think so?
I think we're still very much, at least in the next 5 years, at a stage where VR is this side gimmick
Okay.
and it's not the main. Until they can get a VR system that is immersive but not clunky.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's be honest, the VR headset is huge.
Oh, you're talking about on PlayStation, definitely.
On most of them, it's they're all huge headsets. They vary in size, but at the end of the day, it's this big helmet
Right.
that you're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know that it's gotten wireless, which is nice. I mean, very nice.
Right.
But it's still this big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I almost want a way for them to just give you full rooms that somehow you can just project onto that hides your furniture and everything. That when we're at that point of technology, then that's where that's it. But as long as we have these big clunky systems, we're not there.
Right. Right. Have you done like VR in like buildings and stuff, like in other places, or and
I've been in VR rooms and
yeah,
and played on various systems, but it's all really the same
yeah,
as far as what you're wearing and
yeah,
how you're doing it.
yeah. It's generally heavy. So unless the technology really gets super small, super fast, we're not gonna have VR for a while.
Which it's going to get smaller very quickly. That's I want to say someone's law. I'm drawing a blank here, but the electronics law says that we're going to keep getting smaller and smaller.
Right.
And so it's bound to happen, and until they put VR contacts in my eyeballs,
Right.
it's not going to be the main.
Do you want that? Do you want like a visor or VR contacts or something connected directly to your brain?
I'm a huge fan of augmented reality.
Okay.
I'd love to be able to walk around, see the time in the top right corner. When I walk up to a person, know their name without going, "Hey, Jeff."
Dude. That's my big one.
My go-to is "Hey, buddy."
Yeah.
And
right.
usually it works.
Yeah.
No one notices, but
Yeah, I usually just start asking them questions and, forget about the name. Oh, what time is it? And then you get past the introduction part if you don't know their name, and then you go to your buddy and say, "Hey, dude, could you ask this guy his name?" And then they go and do it, right? Or like someone like, you introduce yourself. The big thing that I always did was I would just give my friend Michaela a signal, and that would just mean that she would ask. So I didn't look like an idiot because I just looked like a jerk because I didn't introduce them. So
yeah, like I said, I'd love all that technology, just be able to see names.
yeah,
I'm here for the age of the cyborg, honestly.
yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, to me, there are a lot of cautionary tales and things that, but we've got Black Mirror for that. You know what? With all new technology, there's just going to be more and more cautionary tales, and that's just the way it is. It's just going to be people getting scared about technology and not understanding it, and then, and then that passes, and then it goes on to the next thing that people get scared about and don't understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also a part of horror, or being scared is a lot of not understanding whatever it is that you're afraid of. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's that's the bane of the human existence.
Yeah, I guess
just
so.
pump me full of nanites so that I can live forever and call it a day.
That sounds like a good plan. Pump you full of nanites. Do you have any parting words of wisdom on the word horror, other than don't go to the pet cemetery?
Yeah, my parting words are: it's pronounced horror. Because I'm pretty sure I said horror a couple times. in this
Oh,
episode.
okay. Yeah, that's something different. You're not afraid of those, are you?
I don't know. It depends.
Especially not in video games. Anyway, so on that note, let's go ahead and close the show, shall we?
Sure.
We're going to sing and dance. No, we're not going to sing and dance. So that was our show on horror. I hope you enjoyed it. With that, let's just say goodbye. And I've been Ben.
And I'm Techtic.
And we've been your hosts. Thank you very much. Have a great Halloween. Ooh.